ever launched a product, and it didn't quite take off like you hoped.
Happens to the best of us, right?
Tell me about it. But hey, that's why we're here. Today, we're going to dive deep into this thing called user-oriented development process.
UODP.
Exactly, UODP. Trying to figure out, how do we actually build stuff people want to use,
Yeah, for sure.
And we're dissecting this awesome blog post by Vyacheslav Kovalevsky.
Great post.
Yeah, it is. And it's cool because he, breaks UODP down into these 6 really clear steps.
Yeah, it's very practical, which I like, because sometimes, UODP can feel kind of jargony.
Totally. And actually, get this, step 1 is define the set of problems you're trying to solve.
Right.
Okay. On the surface, kind of obvious, right?
Sure.
But before we start, picturing our slick new app or whatever, Kovalevsky's like, hold on, pump the brakes. We got to really understand the user's pain points first.
Yeah, it's like that saying, if you had an hour to chop down a tree, you'd spend the first 50 minutes sharpening the axe.
Ooh, I like that.
And understanding the problem is sharpening the axe.
Right.
And you wouldn't believe how many products are out there trying to solve problems that don't even exist.
Oh, man.
Or at least not in the way that they're being solved, right?
Oh, yeah. I've been there. Okay, so how do we make sure we're not, those people?
So step 2, Kovalevsky says, is getting specific, right? It's not enough to be like, oh, yeah, our users are, people who
Right.
We need to define the set of real customers who are actually impacted by these problems. We're talking names, demographics, really specific pain points, the whole shebang.
Okay, so I'm picturing a detective's board with photos and strings connecting them.
Exactly. Because here's where it gets even more interesting, right? Step 3. Onboarding these specific customers onto your solution.
Wait, hold up. We're onboarding people before we even have, a real product.
You got it.
Okay.
And listen, this isn't your typical, sign up and figure it out onboarding.
Right.
In UODP, it's about really actively involving those users in shaping and validating your solution and early in the game.
Wow.
I think of it as collaborative design. The customer is your co-pilot.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this is different. So we're not just gathering feedback on a prototype. It's more we're bringing these users along for the whole ride.
The whole thing.
From problem definition to, hopefully problem solved.
Yeah, you're getting it. And that early and consistent onboarding, it's crucial because it gets you that real world validation, right? And not just building in a vacuum. You're constantly testing your assumptions.
Right.
And making sure this thing you're building, is it actually solving the problem you set out to solve?
This is already blowing my mind, honestly. I'm starting to see why UODP is more than just ticking boxes in an agile framework. It really is a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
But as with anything worthwhile, I'm guessing there are some potential pitfalls here, right? Things to watch out for.
Oh, absolutely. And, Kovalevsky, he doesn't shy away from them.
Okay.
One of the biggest ones is this: abandoning the onboarding process too early.
Oh, okay. I can see how that might be tempting. You validated the problem, you've built what you think is this great solution, maybe even gotten some good feedback during those early onboarding sessions.
Right.
And you're okay, cool, let's just release this thing. We did it. Victory.
It's so tempting though, right? Because you feel like you're there. But releasing a product, that's just the beginning.
Okay, so walk me through this. What's the danger of stopping onboarding too soon?
Okay, imagine this. Okay. You're building a house, right? And you ask your friend for some feedback on the bathroom design.
Okay.
They love it. You're feeling great. So you go ahead, build the whole house based on that one bathroom conversation. But then you find out, the layout doesn't work for the kitchen, the living room feels cramped, and there's no coat closet anywhere.
Ouch. Yeah, I'm feeling that analogy deep in my soul. Just because one part works doesn't mean the whole system's humming.
Exactly. And Kovalevsky actually gives this great example in the post about this team that they validated a bunch of problems, right? Built features for each one. They're doing the work, but their product still totally flopped.
Wait, what went wrong? They were checking all the UODP boxes, right?
They were, but they fell into this classic trap, spreading themselves too thin.
Okay.
They tackled so many problems that they kind of lost focus on the bigger picture, how it all connected. So yeah, bunch of validated features, but not a cohesive user-centric product.
It's they built a car with all the right parts, but they forgot to make sure the engine ran.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we avoid that? How do we avoid that feature factory fate?
Prioritization is key. Even within UODP, you can't solve everything at once.
Right.
You've got to identify those most critical problems, the ones that are causing the most pain, and focus your energy there.
So it's about making those tough choices even when, you've got this backlog full of validated problems.
Absolutely. And constantly checking in, right? Are people actually using the solution? Are they getting those results they expected? Is it fitting into their workflow?
Okay, that makes sense. But I imagine some folks might be thinking, what happens if I pour all this effort into onboarding a customer and then they back out?
Sure.
That feels risky, right?
It's a valid concern. But Kovalevsky argues that if you're doing UODP right, and that means really understanding the user's needs, collaborating with them every step of the way,
Right.
the chances of them backing out are actually lower.
Because they're invested. It's a partnership, not just like a transaction.
Exactly. And he has a great tip for mitigating that risk even further. Always have multiple customers in your onboarding pipeline. That way,
Oh, smart.
not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Smart. Okay. That makes me feel better. But here's another fear that pops up for me. What about over-optimizing for one specific customer?
Okay, yeah.
I can see myself getting so laser-focused on solving their unique problems that I end up with a solution that's way too niche.
Right, you're worried about building something that's perfect for one person, but then it doesn't resonate more broadly.
Exactly. So how do we strike that balance between solving a specific problem for a specific user, but also creating something that has broader appeal?
Kovalevsky actually flips that fear on its head. He says it's way more common to build the generic solution that tries to be everything to everyone and then ends up being nothing to no one.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying we should actually be aiming for a specific niche instead of trying to please everyone. That's counterintuitive, but it kind of makes sense.
It's like that old saying, right? If you try to please everyone, you'll please no one.
Right.
UODP is about building those solutions that solve specific problems for specific people.
Right.
And by doing that really well, you often end up creating something with a much wider appeal anyway.
Because ultimately, people can tell when something was built with genuine empathy and an understanding of their needs.
Totally.
It's like that feeling when you walk into a perfectly curated boutique. You can tell someone put a lot of thought into every detail, even if it's not something you would pick out,
It's the difference between a mass-produced item and something that feels handcrafted, unique. And that's what UODP is all about, crafting those solutions that really fit.
Okay, I'm loving this. But let's get practical for a second. What does this look like in action? Say I'm a product manager. I'm used to the traditional way of doing things. How do I actually start implementing these principles?
That's the beauty of it. You don't need to overhaul your whole system overnight, right? It's more about shifting your mindset, incorporating these key principles into what you're already doing.
Okay, so baby steps.
Yeah.
What's a good first step to take?
Start by shifting your focus from features to problems.
Okay.
I know, sounds obvious. But before solutions, really dig deep into the problems your users are actually facing.
And not just any problems. We're talking about those deep-seated pain points, the things that keep your users up at night.
Exactly. Talk to your users, observe how they're currently solving the problem. You'll be surprised what you learn.
Okay, I see how that's different from just collecting feature requests. We're going way deeper.
Much deeper. Then, once you have a good understanding of that problem, identify the specific customers who are feeling it the most.
Okay, so we're back to our detectives board, mapping out the who's who of our user base.
Precisely, because the next step is to bring those users into the fold. Make them active participants.
So it's not just about sending out surveys, hosting a focus group. It's about truly collaborating with them.
Absolutely. Involve them in brainstorming, get their feedback on prototypes, iterate together.
And I'm sensing a theme here. This is ongoing, not a one-and-done deal. We're not just gathering feedback at the beginning and then calling it a day.
Continuous feedback is essential. Be open to adapting your approach based on what you learn.
Flexibility is key. Because as much as we like to think we have all the answers, sometimes the best insights come from the most unexpected places.
Totally. The users you're onboarding, they might have completely different mental models than you do. They might use your product in ways you never even imagined.
Right.
And that's gold.
So we need to be ready to throw out our assumptions and really listen to what our users are telling us.
You got it. And honestly, that's where the magic happens, right? When you truly embrace that user perspective, that's when you unlock a whole other level of innovation.
It's like we're not just building a product. We're going on this journey of discovery with our users.
I love that. It's so much more collaborative. And you know what? Ultimately, it's way more rewarding. And the best part, you don't need some fancy UODP degree to do this.
Right. We've been talking about these big ideas, but it really comes down to some pretty, simple, actionable steps.
Exactly. Have a conversation. Ask your users, what are your biggest pain points? Observe how they're currently trying to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
You might be surprised.
Totally. Okay, so let's say I've got my detective board, right? I've identified the problem, the key players. What's next?
Bring them into the fold. And I don't just mean ask for their opinion. I mean, invite them to be part of the solution. Show them those early prototypes. Get their feedback on your ideas. Iterate together.
So it's less, here's what we're building, tell us what you think, and more. Let's figure this out together.
100%. It's a partnership. And like any good partnership, it needs that open communication, that willingness to listen, and that shared commitment to the end goal.
Which is?
Solving the problem, a real problem for a real person.
Yes. And when you do that, you're not just shipping a product, you're creating something meaningful, something that can actually make a difference.
For sure.
Okay, I am feeling inspired. So for our listeners who are ready to take that UODP plunge, what's the one thing you want them to remember?
UODP is about action. You know, it's not enough to just read about it. You got to do it. So pick a problem, find your users, and start building together. Honestly, you won't regret it.
Love it. And for you listening, think about this. What a problem you face that could use a little UODP magic. Maybe it's time to ditch the theoretical and get our hands dirty. Until next time, happy building.